Hi guys, Swordmaster here. Today we're going to talk about creating your characters in the RPG Wizard, which is a follow-on from the last tutorial that I did when we were creating animations to use with our characters. So what is a character in RPG Wizard? So in RPG Wizard, if you go to the Wizard's Tower tutorial and you play that, the first character you control here is a character asset, and all these left, right, or north, south, east, west are his animations that are assigned to this character. And so I'm going to show you how you can make that that character using the animations, some of the animations that we created in the last tutorial. So to create a new character, you simply need to go to File, New, Create Character. And the first thing you'll be presented with is a small editor window, which has two tabs, Stats and Animations. And here in the Properties window down here, you'll also see some other properties that you can edit, and I'll cover those in a minute. But first, to cover over the Stats panel. So on the Stats panel, you have a few basic things that you can set, such as a profile picture, which is used or can be used in the dialogue system. So 100 by 100 is kind of the default size used for the dialogue system. So you have to double click on this and then you find a suitable asset. I'm just going to select one at random here. It's just this orb. But you can see that sets that, and then when you save this character, you'll be able to get access to what profile picture you assigned. On the starting stats, there are also some basic stuff like his name. So I'm just going to call this this guy Demo. You can assign some stuff like level, max level, experience, and all these kind of health stats. They're not used as such. You can use them, you can access them in your own custom battle systems. They are used in the default battle system. You don't have to worry about them too much for now though. We'll come back to them in a future tutorial. What I really want to go over is assigning animations. So animations are assigned to slots. So by default there are 13, I think, slots created for every character. These are the default animations. You can't delete these slots, but you don't have to assign all of them. You do have to assign at a very minimum though the north, south, east and west movement animations. Those four you always have to assign something. Even if it's the same static animation, if it's just like a rock or something, you have to assign those four. So I'll just assign the north one. So I already have some animations here created into the Wizard's Tower, so I'm just going to reuse those. So I'm going to set the walk north one, and straight away you'll see the animation is rendered in this window. And like the animation editor, you can press play and the animation will play. And you can also see this pair of boxes around the character's animation. So there's a yellow one and then there's a red one. What these are what we call vectors in the RPG Wizard, or kind of collision boundaries, if you're more familiar with something like Unity or something like that. So if I just go over, the red one is solid collision. So this is actually the collider. So basically if any solid object comes into contact with this red box, then that character will stop at that collision point. So that defines the solid area around the character model. And then the yellow one is what we call activation vectors. So they are for triggering events. So they're not solid, so you can pass through objects, but if there is a trigger on that object, it will trigger that event. Okay, so you just need to basically just set each of the animations. So just set east, and you see the east one, I set the south one, and then I set the west one, and so on. So you can also assign diagonal north, south, northeast, northwest. If you don't assign them, then they're just assigned by default. So the northeast one would just become the east animation if it's not assigned, things like that. There are some other animations that are used in the default battle system, such as the attack, die, and defend animations. And you can also go and create your own slots. And this is useful for custom systems, so you can just have like a custom slot, and so it's all alphabetically sorted, and then you can assign some animation to that. So assign the herd animation, and you can delete these custom slots. You'll notice that the delete option isn't available on the default ones, but you can delete the custom slots if you want. And in a future tutorial, we'll cover actually using these custom animations in your game. So let's say you want to adjust the collision or the activation vectors. To do that, you need to come down here, and you can see that you can define the width, height, and the offsets. Now what the offset is really from, there's a central point in the character model here. You can't see it, but it's kind of an invisible center point. And it's like 0 kind of in the middle of the guy. So if I set this to something like 10, that should then move the red one offset by 10 in the Y, and you can see it shifts down. So you can adjust these to whatever you want, and you can even disable them altogether. So if you don't want, for example, this object to collide with solid things, you can completely disable the what is called the base vector, or the kind of the solid red one. What that will do is it means that if you had something like an arrow or a projectile where you want it to pass through objects, you can just disable this, and it will pass through things. You can disable the activation one as well. That's a bit less common, but disabling the base one and leaving the activation one is useful for projectiles, because you could have the projectile pass through objects but trigger an event if it hits the player, and that's where you would use these kind of toggles. Okay, so that kind of covers the basics of characters. So you can just save the character and just go like demo character in this case. And yeah, so that's really all there is to characters from an editor point of view. In a future tutorial, I'll go over using them on the board in your game. So actually putting them into the game, and then actually changing some of their animations and health stats in programs and events and things like that. So that's it for today, guys.